I'm Ash Mannix, and in this video, I'll show you how to make a native plugin for OBS. So the idea of this video is to show the initial steps required to get a basic plugin to work in OBS. I'm going to do this using C++, so this will be a native plugin, so I'm not going to be using the scripting, Lua scripting that you can use for OBS or anything like that. This is going to be a bit more involved. What I'll be using to get this to work is Windows 10 as the operating system, Microsoft Visual Studio Code, which is free, with C++ extension plugins installed. You might need Microsoft Visual Studio 2022, whatever the current version is, to install the required C++ dependencies, and also when running the build scripts, which might ask for it. Okay, so the first step is to go to github.com. What we're going to do is get a copy of the OBS plugin template that's already been made by the OBS team, which is going to do most of the work for you. So yes, I'm hardly going to do any work here. So I think it's just under OBS project. If I'm correct, here we go. So github.com OBS project /OBS -plugin template. So what we're going to do is we're going to download a zip folder of this to get a copy, and that will be that. The next step is to go into our folder and we'll unzip that into whatever folder you want to keep the file in. Okay, we have now got our file downloaded in our downloads folder. I'll just do it in my downloads, but you can unzip it where you want to keep it. Extract in the same place, yes to all, close this, and we'll have the folder here. The next thing you want to do, once you've unzipped the folder, is open up Visual Studio Code, go to File, want to open folder, and if I go to my downloads, there's OBS plugin template -master, select that folder and it should, I'm just going to say yes to that, open up the folder containing all the files in the template. So one of the first things you're going to want to look at is the buildspec.json file. So this has a bunch of dependencies which will be downloaded and run when we try and build the plugin. But the main thing to look at is here on line 84, where it says OBS-plugin template. So what we're going to do is change that to the name that you want to have for your plugin. So I'm just going to call this Mannix test plugin, and then you can put whatever version you want there as well. The important thing here is that the name and the version you use here has to match in two other places. So the other file you want to look at is cmakelists.txt, which again is in the root folder. Let me just make sure I have saved that. So in here, if you look here, we've got the project on line 5. It's the name of the project. It says here, change the OBS plugin to your plugin's name in a machine readable format. So yes, no special characters and spaces, make sure you have dashes and the like. So I'm just going to copy paste and just make sure that the version here, 1.0.0, matches what you put in the build spec as well. These will all come into play when you run the build script and the packaging scripts. The other place to look at is within this .github folder under workflows, click on main.yaml. So this is used for what's called GitHub Actions. I'm probably not going to go into too much detail about this. I might do a separate video on it, but you can, if you store the code, if you upload this code onto your own GitHub repo, you can use GitHub Actions to this will build the plugin for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, which is actually really cool. And it will create a release on the repo and it'll populate that release with the relevant files, including zip files of the plugin, but also installation files as well. So you can just run an installer, at least for Windows and Mac OS, which is kind of awesome. So the important thing here is just on this line 20 to make sure you've got the same name that you have put in both the buildspec.json file and the makelists.txt file. And what we can try and do just to make sure that this works is we're going to run the scripts. So this is the powerful thing about this template that OBS has created, is that there's a whole bunch of scripts in here that will allow you, that will automatically build your plugin. They will download the requirements. So this will download a copy of the OBS repo, as well as some dependencies depending on what you're using, and it will build the plugin. So I think one thing I forgot to mention is the main code of your plugin will sit in the source folder under plugin.main.c, and you can see here this is kind of like where the entry code is, which is not really doing that much, loading the plugin and unloading the plugin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a terminal in Visual Studio, and I'm going to run the script. So if I just go GitHub scripts, so it's GitHub /scripts/build, and it's already detected it, windows.ps1. And I'm going to have to make sure, just make sure that when you open this, it's in PowerShell, because this is a PS1 file for Windows and will work only in PowerShell. And let's see if this will work. So you can see just now, it's pulling down the dependencies for the plugin. And just a thing of note that wherever you've got the files saved is where it's going to, you can see here OBS build dependencies, it will pull down the files and put it in folders in the same folder. So just be aware of that before you run the build script. And this will take a decent amount of time. So if I am smart, I will fast forward this. Okay, I think that's it done. As you can see, that took a while to do. But what we need to do now is have a look at the release folder that's should have been created from all of this. So if we look at where we kept our folder, so it's obs-plugin template-master, we go to release, and we look at, you'll see there's two folders. One is the OBS plugins folder, 64-bit. That's got two files there, DLL and a program debug database file, I think. And if I go back to release, there's also a data folder for the OBS plugins, and you can see Ashmanix tutorial plugin. It's taking the name that we've given it. And within that, it will have whatever you have stored in the data folder in your folder structure. Right now, it's just got one folder, which is locale, and in that is locale. And in that is the file that you'd use if you want to use, if you have translations, if you want to add wording that that you would support in multiple languages, you'd put it in here. Just open it up, you can see it's empty just now. And you can add different languages in here, and what will happen is when the plugin is running in the user's OBS, it will look at the locale that the computer set at, and it will try and find a translation file relevant to that. And I'll show you in a second how you would take advantage of that. Okay, so we've just ran the build script, and it's built our files. If we go to the location of the plugin folder, you'll see now there is a release folder, which you'll also see here. And if you go there, you'll see the relevant folders and files within them have been created for your plugin. So we're going to just check that this works, even though we've not got the plugin doing anything at the moment, but there is a way that we can check this, put it into the folders that OBS looks at, and then check that at the very least it is being read by OBS. So you go to your C drive, program files, and then OBS Studio. Right, within here you can see there is two folders. One is called data and another one's called OBS plugins. So in our release folder under plugins, there is 64-bit. If you go into the 64-bit folder, because I'm using a 64-bit version of Windows, right click, copy the DLL and the PDB file, which have been created by the script. And if you now go into your OBS folder under OBS plugins, 64-bit, you just right click and paste, and it will just say, you know, can I do this? Yes, go for it. Now, if you go back up to the OBS Studio folder again and go to data, OBS plugins, you'll see a list of folders here. And these are all the folders that will have the data files for each of the plugins. So if we go back here to your release file, to the data folder, OBS plugins, you can see it's copying the folder structure that the OBS app has. Now copy the folder with your name on it and paste it to the data/OBS plugins folder, like so. Continue that. Just check date modified. You can see here, there's my Ashmanix test plugin. Now what we're going to do, now this is going to be interesting because I'm currently recording with OBS, but I think I can open another instance. Launch anyway, don't go mental on me, please. Now, we've got OBS running. To check that the plugin is at least loading, if you go to Help, Log Files, and then View the current log. I'm just going to bring this into view. Does this expand a little bit? Now what we're looking for is the name of our plugin. It should appear. So you can see in square brackets, you've got kind of the name of things here. You'll have in square brackets the name of your plugin when it's loaded. It'll probably be fairly early on in this log. Yeah, you can see warning, OBS is already running. Now if I scroll down a little bit, and if I'm eagle-eyed enough, you can see here, and I'll hopefully zoom in when I'm editing this, in square brackets, ashmanix-tutorial-plugin, plugin loaded successfully, and it gives you the version, which is handy if you want to just double check what the version of the plugin that you've got currently loaded on OBS. And this does this for all the other plugins that you have loaded in OBS. You can see OBS browser is listed here as well and stuff like that, and OBS WebSockets and all that stuff. So we've been able to, so far, build the plugin using the template code and copy the files over into OBS and get it to show up. Awesome. The next step is just to do something extremely basic. My aim will be just to have a pop-up window, and when you click on it, it will do something. And it's just to kind of demonstrate the very basics of what you can do in OBS. Right. So before I carry on, there's two important websites that you'll need to use as a reference to kind of try and get your head around what you can do with OBS plugins. The first is the OBS projects API documentation, which you can see under obsprojects.com/docs/index.html. I'm going to be really honest here and say that the documentation here doesn't go into that much detail. What you will find a lot more useful is going onto the OBS forums, and under the forums there is a plugins resource forum. And in here, if you make a plugin and you want to list it, you list it here. And it's a weird system, but this is how you can people access plugins for OBS. You probably already know this anyway. But what I've done when I was making my countdown plugin was I've looked at, so one example is Exceldro, who I believe has done quite a few plugins, native plugins for OBS. And if you kind of click on one of the plugins produced by someone like Exceldro, again, all the plugins should have a source code URL. So you can go to GitHub and then you can have a look at how they've coded their plugin. And you can see all the details that have gone in here. Now this is a pretty OBS replay source, pretty complicated plugin, but it is great for searching for stuff. Like if you've used it and you know that they used like a dockable widget or something like that. So we had previously just ran the plugin, copied the files into the relevant folders for OBS, and just checked the logs to show that the plugin was being loaded. So what we're going to do is make the plugin do something ever so slightly interesting. We're going to show up a dockable window, and we will have a button on that dockable window, and when you click on that button it will just show a message. And this will just be an extremely simple example of using some of the Qt UI framework that is part of OBS, and just doing something very basic, just for as something to hopefully give you an idea of what's involved. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new C++ file, and we'll just call this, so that's plugin main, so we'll just call this test.cpp, and we'll also add a header for that as well, test.hpp. Cool. And what we will do is, oops, this is what happens when you get too used to using AMAC in dev. So for this header file, we're just going to say, put this boilerplate code in that just checks that if this header is not already been defined, then we will define it. It's not test code, it's test. Right, and we'll just make sure, because I always forget to do this, put the end if at the end. Now, what we're going to do is create a class. I'm going to call it test widget. You can spell it properly. And this will inherit, because this is going to be a dockable widget, this is going to inherit from qdoc widget, which comes from the Qt framework. And so we need to include the qdoc widget header library. There we go. And that's probably going to complain about that, because it should work when you run it. There's some things we need to change before we build the plugin, but it should hopefully build. If we have any issues, we'll just check it later on. So let's put in some public things. So we're going to have the test widget again, and what this is going to do is we're going to pass in the parent widget, which will actually be the OBS parent window. So that's what's a plan, and just kind of some boilerplate for when it closes. Let me delete the widget. So I'm going to have some functions. So that we're going to have a function that's just going to be button clicked. And that's just going to be the function that will then open up a pop-up window, again using Qt. Going to have a copy of the parent widget. Or reference to it. And we're going to have a button, reference to a Q push button. And again, as I've mentioned before, the documentation for Qt is indispensable when it comes to figuring out what is available in the Qt framework and how to use it. The documentation is actually, it's a little bit of a pain to search for things, but it has all the information you need to kind of get you started. And I've just realized I've done something innocent. So a slot, you need to use slots to send. What you can do is you can send signals and receive signals in a sense using the Qt framework. So when a button is clicked or a field is updated, you will use a slot that will send, keep saying a signal, but it will trigger, you can get it to trigger specific functions that then will do something after that event has happened. So I just realized that these are very similarly named, but to hell with it, I'm just going to keep it because that's what I did in my test code. So, right. And we need to also make sure that we include, and I'm just going to copy paste this because I cannot be bothered. So you'll see we've got Q push button. We're going to use a horizontal box layout for the dockable window to put in the button. And I've just put the Q push button in it twice, so that's not. We're using a Q widget, which is for the parent window that's coming in, and we're going to trigger a Q message box. So we're just including all of these in the header file for our test code. So we now go to the CPP file itself. What we should do is include test code.hpp, which code. It's going to pass in the parent, reference to the parent window. And this is some Qt stuff. We're just saying that is going to come back as a Q.widget. And we're just going to call this test widget. Plugin. Right. Cool. Right. So one other thing we're going to have to do, well, won't need to do it now, but if you potentially want to use this blog, it's actually being, this is defined within, if I remember correctly, here in the plugin macros.h header file. So I'm not going to use that for now. I'm just going to write this code and hopefully it works. I don't need to do any fancy logging. And I'm just going to say that this parent is going to equal to the parent that we've passed in. We're going to create a Q widget. So this will be the widget that will contain what will be the dockable widget that we create from this. So, and we're just going to allocate the class button. Well, we've got the class button, so we're going to set the text. So you just do set text. And to make life a little bit easier, I'm just going to have a check of this. And what you want to do is you will have to install Qt if you want to have the libraries. So you go to the Qt website. Qt, let's see if that gets all. Oh, it's bright, too bright. Qt.io. Browse the Qt framework. Or we can go to download try. Now, There is, yes, for open source use. So this is only, you can only use this as for open source. OBS is open source. The plugins you make, I believe, are technically all have to be open source. If you wanted to do this for a commercial program, you'd have to pay for it. So anyway, get started, source code, so we look development, start contributing. Right, here we go. Download the Qt online installer. And then you download that and just kind of install that. And what you'd need to do then is check where that was installed. And for me, that would be in the Qt folder on the C drive. So I believe when you build this, it will create a CPP properties JSON automatically. And I don't know if there's an option. Either way, what I need to do is I've already added where the so you need libobs and we'll need UI, which are in. So when you first ran the plugin, it would have downloaded OBS Studio, and within that it would download some libraries that are required to build the plugin. So that will install, as I've said, I believe I said before, in the same folder that you have this project in. The next thing to do is to make sure you have added the Qt folder, the Qt conclude folder, and I'm going to just put this in here. And I just need to correct this for Windows. Hopefully. Let's see. What's the thing now? No? Widget. Did I? Oh, it would help if I put it's Qt widgets, I believe. Still complaining? Kind of open source file. Maybe I need both, so I will just copy that and see if I can get away with that as well. Still complaining. Lovely. I don't know if I'd missed something there, but either way, that's fixed it. Now this is complaining because I believe I don't have a semicolon there because C++ is a pain in the backside sometimes that way. Now if I go to my test CPP, it should now just be complaining. I've called that test widget and I'm calling this test code. So there you go. Let's see if it's okay with that. Okay, so we're going to set text, and now we have IntelliSense, which is really helpful. So I just need to put some text in here. I'm just going to tell it to say press me. Right, so that's what the button's going to say. And then how things work in Qt is that when you create a QDoc widget, it needs to have at least one sort of box layout or layout type. So there's various different ones: vertical layout, horizontal box layout, which is the one I'm going to use, and I think there's some other ones, but for this example we're going to use a horizontal box layout, or QH box layout. Let's get a reference to that. So we're just going to call it layout because we only have one. If you look at the my countdown plugin code, you'll see that I've used a bunch of different layouts to get everything set out in a certain way. And it's a bit of a pain. It was a bit complicated, but it's an example if you want to see something that is a little more complex in this test plugin. It's a good one to look at. And also, as I've mentioned before, other plugins that you can see that use a UI element on the OBS forums. Right, so now I've created this layout, and I'm adding the button widget to this layout. So you create the layout, and then you add the widgets that will sit in the layout this way. Add widget. Now I've got the original widget, which is going to be the main plugin dockable widget. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say you have to set a layout. You have to set a layout, I believe, otherwise it won't work. For this widget, and it's going to be layout. Simple. Now we're going to set the widget for our, so we've created this widget. Now we're going to set the widget for our QDoc widget as this widget that we have just created in this code, in this function. Now I'm going to do a couple of other things just so that it doesn't, this was me, I had to play around with this to get this to, so it doesn't load and doesn't load in a weird way, but you don't need to really do this. Well, set widget false, so that will hide it. Set floating to true, so when we first open the widget, it will not be docked, it will be floating, so that's preferable. What happens is you'll see that when we dock the widget, and if you close OBS and restart it, it will remember the widget's position and it will load that. So I'm going to resize it. So I don't know what size it's set to by default, but I'm just going to do it 300 by 300. Now, I mentioned slots, and so what slots are is it's used, as I've said, to connect a UI event to a function within your code. So how you use them is you do QObject, and we're going to say connect. So we're going to connect slot, and so the first thing we're going to put in is the widget, which is the button widget, and then we're going to put in its signal. We're going to, I'll do this properly, and I can't type for some reason. What on earth is going on? Ah, right, and cap lock's on. And the click, that'll be the clicked signal from the button widget. And again, looking at documentation, you'll get a list of the different slots or different signals you can use. So you have a signal, and then the slot will receive that signal. I don't get the analogy, to be fair, but that's how it works in this. So clicked, semicolon, right. So I just go back to my header, which I'll actually switch over to here. Or actually, no, I'll just keep it here and make it simple. You can see that I had called out my function here under slots, and this is what we're using here. So let us do, and I don't know if I'm just going to put this in here for completion's sake. You know, this will be the function called when the widget is deleted. So you can put code in there, depending if you want to unload things or whatnot, free up memory. Though with most things it should just handle that automatically. And we're going to put in the button clicked function, which is the slot function for our signal. And what we're going to do is we're going to create so queue message box information type. So there's different types of queue message box, and this is how it's kind of instantiated. You can have, I think, warning. I don't know. There's information, and then there's maybe error. Maybe not. But for this case, information. And we're going to pass in the queue widget, the parent queue widget, which will be this class, which is going to be our dockable widget. So that will be the parent. We're just going to put in the title as info. I don't know why on Windows I have to double click the quotation marks for it to come up. It's kind of annoying because I'm used to, on the Mac, you just press 1 and it just shows. I don't know why it does that actually. I don't know if that's a Visual Studio Code thing and I need to change it. And I'm going to say you clicked on a box. Yes. There you go. Right. And it's not moaning about it. Huzzah. Now, Before you try and run this, I think it's going to show some errors. We have to go back to our cMakeLists file. And you'll notice, and so you'll notice, and I know I missed this in the beginning, and this confused me when I was trying to create this example test plugin for myself. Uncomment these lines if you want to use the OBS front-end API in your plugin. And uncomment those lines if you want to use Qt in your plugin. So Qt is used for UI elements, and we do. So we want to take this line out and this line out, and take this out and this out. Right. Now we'll go back to plugin main.c because we have to make some changes to this main file as well. And what we're going to do, if I can find this, is right. So we want to now include a couple more headers in here, more files. So the first one is going to be the OBS front-end API. So yeah, we're going to use that. And we're also going to use in this file the Q widget. And of course, now that we've created our test.cpp file, we want to include it. Test.hpp. I say cpp, hpp. Why is it moaning about this? Include errors. Cannot open source files obs-frontend-api.h. Well, we will see for now. We'll just leave that in for now. Again, just effects IntelliSense, and this is always a massive pain in my backside when I try to figure out why the hell it's not able to detect a library, but to hell with it. Right, so got the header file. So we're going to, in the main plugin main.c, we're going to create a main window, which is going to be cast it as QWidget type. And we're going to say, and this is going to be an OBS API function front end. Yes, this is why we need the front end API, and so it's not going to give me it's not going to autocomplete because I don't have IntelliSense's shitting its pants. Anyway, I'm going to say test widget. Test widget equals new test widget. And so what we're doing is, so the first line is getting a reference to the main OBS window, and we are passing that main window into our class so that it knows what it's going to be a dockable widget to. Now, we then do another OBS front-end API function called OBS front-end add dock, because we're adding a dockable widget, and it's still going to be the test widget. And hopefully that will be it. I believe I have missed one other important thing out. Back in cMakeLists, you will see this line. Add your custom source files here. Header files are optional and only required for visibility. So we have created a new C file. We just do a space. I'm going to say source, and we're going to have test.cpp. And it's annoying that it's not auto-completing that, but whatever. Right, and problems, whatever. There's always problems. My life is full of problems. Right, let's see if this builds, and hopefully it doesn't shit its pants. Ooh, lots of errors. Lovely. Oh, God. Is that really the issue? Isn't, can't be. I think that, fuck, right. So I love it. I love error messages that make it really hard to understand what the hell the actual problem is. So yeah, so there I had, instead of you saying, I'd copy pasted set widget instead of saying set visible. So yeah, so we're setting the visibility, we're hiding it in the beginning, and we're also going to set it to a floating dockable widget, and resizing it. So I think it was this line here, which it did say, and I've deleted those files, and so I'm now going to have to re-download them, which is fun. And we'll see if it throws any errors now. Right, and that reloaded, and we still have the same error. Good stuff. Let's see if there's anything else it tells us. Oh, all right, so there's so many errors, it went no. Hey, that's me back. That took a little while to figure out, but I think I've figured out what the issue is. So I'll just make sure this is up. So you'll notice that I have created .cpp files for my specific plugin code, and the plugin-main file is just a C file. What's happening is that the compiler is thinking this is in C, and then it goes to the test cpp files, C++ code, or tries to refer to, or C++ and tries to refer to different libraries or something, and it just shits the bed. Either way, you should not be doing this. It might work, but it might just be the way it's bringing in those dependencies. So if I change plugin-main to a C++ file, and then we go to the CMake lists file and just make sure that where we have target sources, we update this to CPP. Hopefully now, I save this as well. Don't know why this never finds the front end API even though I've got it in include files, but either way, let's try and rebuild it. And if this still doesn't work, I don't know what I'm going to do. I did try this before and it did run, so... Okay, so I forgot to add one more thing, which if I don't add it, it won't work, is to add this queue object here. Apparently this is needed by Qt, and without it, it won't work properly. So we're going to try and run the script another time. So we go back to your C drive, program files, OBS Studio, OBS plugins. You'll see there's data in OBS plugins. Now in data, if we had updated this, we would have to go to data, OBS plugins, and if we had updated any of the text style, the files that sit within the data folder, we would have to put them in here under the name of your, so I've got here Ashmanix. Is this what we've called this? I forget. We have named this, and if I go to my CMake, it's under build spec as well, Ashmanix tutorial plugin, which is not here actually, so this was another plugin I did. So we're going to have to copy these over because this is going to, I've not done this before, even though we don't have any files in our data folder currently. So we just go to the release folder, and you see under data, OBS plugins, they are Ashmanix tutorial plugin. So I will copy this just for completion and paste it here. Continue. So that is under data, and that has got the locale enus, which has actually nothing in it. So go back to OBS Studio, OBS plugins, and it's if we follow the file structure under here, OBS plugins, it's in 64-bit, 4-bit, and I will now copy these over. And it'll be like, yeah, we already have these in here. Yes, replace them. Continue. Oh, this is actually going to be because the folder files open another program. Try again. Oh, this is an absolute pain in the ass. But give me a second and we will transition, and I would have hopefully been able to copy and paste them in, having paused OBS. Back in a second. Now, hopefully, if I go to docs, you'll see Ashmanic's test plugin. I don't know why it opened over there. And hopefully I press this. Yes, and I've got a nice spelling spec. N4. You click the box, and I can't click on the main plugin until I click out of this. And if I dock the plug, you can see the window is dockable. I can dock it here, or wherever it can really fit. Put it back here. Press that, and you've clicked on a box. Cool. So there you go. After a lot of trial and tribulation, which was, to be fair, the workflow for this is a pain in the arse, but definitely trial and tribulation. Looking up the code on GitHub, referring to the fairly sparse API documentation, and also you can also go on the OBS forums website, forums site, and there is I think there's a development forum in there that you can use to ask questions as well. But there you go. Hopefully, if you followed along, and I'm going to hopefully edit out all the crap that I had to go through, this worked, and you will have at the very least a little dockable widget with a button, and that will be enough to get you started on whatever project you want to do, where you want to make a native plugin for OBS. So I will actually I should just go full face, right? Anyway, hopefully that was handy. I'll leave you there. This is going to be terribly edited and put together, and this could have been done. I could have planned this a lot better, but this is how it goes on this channel. So I hope you found this of some use. I'll leave you there. I'm Ashmanix. This was me badly trying to do a tutorial on how to make an OBS plugin, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.